Monsieur Vial, qui ne peut plus se déplacer, de faire la...
Mr. Vial cannot be here, so he asked me to read his report, which relates to the sewing of the lateral stripe of the shroud, of the Holy Shroud. Within a possible complementary study about the Holy Shroud of Turin, it is important to take care once more of the lateral stripe, the width of which is 5 centimeters, which was sewn to the on the main stripe, and which brought about discussion already during the previous symposium and in the minutes of 1989 on the basis of X-rays which were carried out on the two parts, including the sewing, and which show that there are some irregular signs of sewing. We thought that it was the same original fabric cloth, and that secondly this stripe had been sewn back after being used, moment when it was as long as the main shroud, so it corresponded perfectly with the shroud itself. First slide. Parts which are now missing, 14 and 30 centimeters, were taken away later after the thread had broken because of manipulations of the shroud during its history. There are few doubts as to the fact that the fabric is the same. Scrupulous research by Professor Rice, who says that there is no cotton, doesn't seem to be very determining until we will find out the importance of the presence of the linen thread. In my opinion, the fabric is the most important question. I think that some explanation should be given through the analysis of the sewing, which brings together the two ends of the shroud. I'd like to have the first slide, please. The various slides we derived from that. The next two slides, please. Could you show the fourth slide, please? We have suggested in our report two hypotheses. Hypothesis A, there is just one series, the direction which is Z-shaped and which relates to the sewing, its initial dimension, which is size, which is smaller than the cloth, and this makes the sewing not solid.
Faudrait vraiment la quatrième diapo, sinon c'est...
We probably show the fourth slide, otherwise everything turns to be impossible to understand.
La suivante.
The next one, please. Another one. The next one, please. The scheme. It is not this one. It's slide number 4, which shows a chart scheme.
On avait pourtant tout vérifié avant de...
We had checked the shaped one, which is particularly regular. It is clear that other solutions are possible on the basis of the kinds of assembly which is used. Just one examination carried out by specialists in the restoration of all the tissues could give us certainties. We suggest the following investigation for both ends of the stripe. Macro photography 2 out of 2 with a millimeter scale taken at level of the sewing and 2 centimeters as to the first part and the second one, and this in order to have the maximum image of the sewing, and secondly counting the visible threads, 418 as to the series which was assessed. Third, opening of the sewing for 4 or 5 centimeters and the measurement of the various points, sewing points. Fourth, the 2 parts have to be highlighted with the humidification of the hidden parts in particular, so that they become visible. And I would like the 4th slide to be shown. Here you see there is a scheme, a pattern. I go back to the 2 hypotheses. Hypothesis A, which you see in the upper part of the scheme. Could we use this targeting instrument? You see here the main part of the shroud is the lateral part and the sewing here. On the basis of the first hypothesis, there is just one monodirectional sewing. Its size was reduced because of the assembly, and this allows the sewing to stand pretty well, while the second hypothesis provides for the sewing both from 2 lines on the lateral stripe. But on the basis of hypothesis B, we have 2 fish backbone shaped, which are interesting. The central part is sacrificed, as well as the Z series. For the latter to be soundly sewn, we get a solid and acceptable series. And this is as to the 2 hypotheses of sewing. And then I keep on from the point I had already touched. The various analysis and investigations Professor Vial is suggesting opening for 3 or 4 centimeters of the sewing, assessment of the assembly, and then the 2 hidden parts which should be made visible, humidified. We should intervene on the visible parts. And then macro photography on the basis of the same lighting conditions, counting the threads to check the hypothesis B or to build up a new hypothesis. 6. Reconstruction of the document and control macro photography. In this way we could exactly see where the cut was performed, and if this cut was precisely concluded. I'd like to stress that the first macrophotography could be repeated about 10 times at level of shroud to see whether there was a correct cut or an exact cut. And mainly when were these pieces were brought back together, and whether they were brought back together correctly. So the question is to see what happened at level of the shroud. There could also be check exams which were suggested by the previous symposium, and this is written in the minutes, page 88. All of these exams should be performed in a lab. Macrophotographies can be performed without damaging the finding. The existence of two rims on the lateral stripe and the central one proved that it was the same piece of cloth which was re-sewn back later, going back to the original place of the cloth itself. Now we do not have a precise idea about this problem. The magnifications we carried out are not clear since lighting was not good. Mr. Vial, the report, whose report I'm reading, agrees with the fact that Antoine Legrand can have the following things. Why clothes, a fabric stripe which was cut before is then re-sewn? Are we not isn't that the final bringing back of Otonia? A simple comparison. If during our days, during this time, we buy coffins, why in the past should they not buy clothes aimed at wrapping the corpse for transporting it before burial? After exegetic test, something more could be added.
Bon, nous remercions Mademoiselle Dubois d'avoir présenté.
We would like to thank Mrs. Dubois for presenting the communication by Mr. Gabriel Vial, and now would like